So you guys ready to start? This is a 4-hour workshop.
Lock the doors.
After lunch, right? After lunch, yeah, a 4-hour workshop. I want to thank everybody for coming to this session. It's about 35-40 minutes. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A. But we have a really fantastic case study of improving operational efficiency and socializing RFP, the creation of RFPs. And I'm going to sit down just about too. So what I'd like to do is introduce two of the speakers. One is attorney Walla over here. And I have some notes here about Walla, but I really have to go into some more details because he didn't want to provide this information. We did a little bit of research on him. And we went back and looked at his birth certificate. And we really discovered that this was his destiny in life. Because when we went back and looked at his birth certificate, we discovered a typo in his birth certificate. And this is the correct spelling of his last name. L-A-W. So that's all I could do. That was pretty nice. I said I'll bring some lawyer jokes, but I didn't.
No lawyer jokes?
I wouldn't be nice. So it was like that was as meanest I could be.
That's pretty nice.
That's it. We were talking on the phone getting ready for this, and he goes, "You gonna do any lawyer jokes?" So anyway, I want to give him this is kind of cool. I want to give him a round of applause because when you hear his story about what he did and the time frame he did it, didn't you tell me that you had a kid in the middle of all this too, just for fun, because you weren't working it out?
Right before I took the bar exam, my wife and I had a child. So we gave birth about 3 weeks before I took the bar exam. Actually, around the corner.
Oh, that's crazy. Anyway, let's give him a round of applause for getting that done. That's like a huge deal to do that. So not only did he get his law degree, he's project manager. He's also certified as a Scrum Master. Just a bunch of stuff. In the technology, the social services field, lots of automation stuff. And second up is Les. Les, I couldn't do anything with your name. I tried. Les is actually the project director of Child Welfare Services, a new system project. Been on the project for quite a while. Been on some very large projects, about $400 million project, very large scale for the state, to replace the existing system. And this is kind of, the purpose of this presentation is to walk through the process that they envisioned for streamlining that process of collecting information they needed and engaging 25,000 stakeholders. So I'm going to have more stuff to read, but if you want to add to that, mainly we want to get into the discussion about the project and what they did with the solution we helped them for.
All right, so before we get started, again, my name is Les Fujitani. I'm the project director for the new system effort. Could I get a show of hands on folks that have either worked on an IT project or is in the midst of working on an IT project? Is everyone in? That's great. And then, how many folks have several stakeholder groups that you have to deal with as part of the effort? Okay, that's pretty good. So hopefully you'll get something out of what we have to demonstrate today. From a table of contents perspective, what we're going to go over is the CWS project. We actually renamed ourselves recently from the CWS New System project to the Child Welfare Digital Services Group. And I'll talk about that a little later as we get into the background of our effort. We're also going to go over goals and objectives, business problems associated with what we're trying to achieve. And then there'll be a product demonstration and also talk about some of the design and technical challenges that we experienced. To give you a little background from a business perspective, Child Welfare Services in California is about $5 billion per year funding that's required in order to provide services to the at-risk children in California. On an annual basis in California, there's approximately 475,000 reports of alleged abuse or neglected children. And of those, on average, there's about 95 to 100,000 children either in foster care or are with their families under close county supervision. And so these are very youngest of vulnerable populations in California, and so we need to assist them in having a better life, right? And so in order to do that, we have approximately 25,000 social workers in California that actually provides services to these children, and as well as thousands of service providers who also assist with each and every one of these cases, ranging from policemen to the court system, public health nurses, probation officers, and the like. We have a wide swath of stakeholders on this effort. And not only that, we deal not only with the state control agencies, but also the federal government as well. So there's a lot of scrutiny on our project, and so I think the most important thing that at least our federal partner asks of us is to ensure that we have very frequent and close collaboration with our end user. So we need to build a product that they need in order to provide the services to these needy children. With that said, to give you a little history, this actual project started back in 2006. I know it's 2016 now, so you're probably wondering what happened in 10 years. Well, on the first go-around, we were called the CWS Web Project. And we were in the midst of actually doing draft evaluation of vendor bids when it was decided by the administration to actually suspend our project in 2011. In 2012, we started all over again. Feasibility study report and the whole 9 yards. We started all the way from scratch, which actually has brought us to where we're at today, except for the fact that we actually built what we call a monolithic RFP. We were going to get the systems integrator that would provide all the services that we needed in order to design, develop, and implement a solution. What happened though back in November of 2015, the state government had meetings with the federal government's U.S. digital service team, and that team is called 18F. And 18F just stands for the address of their office. But anyway, these folks are a bunch of brainiacs from Silicon Valley that was brought together by the Obama administration first to actually rescue the healthcare.gov portal. If you guys remember that, when they launched it, it was going down every hour, if not even more frequently, it was never up. So these folks actually re-platformed it and got it working. As part of that, they used an agile approach to actually designing and developing solutions as well as rolling things out. And then also using what we call DevOps or development operations so that there's continuous enhancements. That's both for the technology and also the functional application that sits on top of the platform. That way your technology will never become obsolete and business functions can be enhanced quickly as needed by the end users out there in the field. So with that said, we made the pivot. We're now doing an agile approach. We actually broke our gigantic monolithic RFP, I think it was maybe 1,200 pages with 5,000 requirements, into modular procurements. So what we did was we had major functional areas. And so what we did was, because of the fact that we were able to set up the RFP into functional areas, we were able to reuse that information to actually build smaller procurements so that we could get it out faster. And coupled with the fact we're using user-centered design and research, coupled with agile development, we'll be able to roll out new functionality sooner rather than later. So we expect within a year from now to actually roll out the first of many functions to our end users. We're also going to be interfacing with the back end of the existing system. We're going to do what we call a strangle pattern in order to leverage the existing system while we build new functionality and eventually decommission the existing system once that's completed. So with that said, I better save some time for Wall. Does anyone have any questions related to the child welfare services background? Okay.
So thanks, Greg and Les, for the introduction, and thanks for the overview, Les. So what we're talking about here is we are talking about a population of 25,000 stakeholders, 25,000 potential users to this new system that we're building. And what our goal, kind of traveling back in time, back when we were not, before this agile approach, and when we were doing this monolithic RFP, we had created this monster RFP that we wanted to disperse to our stakeholders to read and give comments and give us feedback. And the objective is, with this whole 10-year time span of this project, the project did a pretty admirable job of maintaining and managing the requirements, but we definitely wanted our stakeholder community to examine our requirements to make sure that we're still documenting their business processes and that the system that we're building is geared towards them. And in addition, anything that we might have missed, gap fillers, we definitely wanted to capture those. And more importantly, the topic of this conversation here and now is engagement, stakeholder engagement. This was our first opportunity to talk to our stakeholder community one-on-one. We wanted to basically involve them earlier and often. We wanted them to understand our RFP, understand what we're doing and what system we're going to be building for them. More or less, we want them to be our partners. We want them to have an ownership stake in the system that's being built. With that, the best place to start is have them involved with our RFP process. What do I want you guys to take away from this presentation? You're probably not going to remember half the things we're talking about, but at the very least, some of the key points that hopefully the message that we're trying to get across that will be useful for some other state projects that have multiple levels of engagement with numerous vendors stakeholders is engage early, engage often, and just like communications, you cannot over-communicate with your stakeholder groups. I equate it to like telling a story. You have to start from the beginning, you have to have a middle, and you have to have an ending. Focus on simplicity. Sometimes, us IT folks, we like to do all these bells and whistles. We like to make things nice. We like to have a nice UI that's beautiful. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't work for your users, it's all for naught. So the message here is focus on the users. Make sure that they know how to use your product. And of course, take a customer service approach. Dealing with child welfare services, we understand that they're a completely different, they have a different culture. They have their own language and certain things, for instance, take the word file. For them, when we're talking about files, we're talking about files in the IT system. For them, they're talking about a file in regards to a child welfare case. Those are the type of nuances that if you're not constantly engaging your stakeholders, you might never pick up on, and that leads to communication problems. And the last point on this slide here is go above and beyond with your user support. Because we're so actively engaged with our stakeholders, at certain points we were able to move some of our most, harshest critics to some of our best advocates for our system because we engaged them in a customer service approach. So as Les mentioned, this is a huge system. It involves all levels of government. We have our federal partners from ACYF, which is the Administration of Children's, Youth, and Family. I always get it wrong.
It's okay.
The Y throws me off. And then we also have, our state users. We have users from state government who uses this child welfare system. In addition to our sponsoring organization, California Department of Social Services, we have oversight from the Department of Technology, and of course we have Office of System Integrations doing project management work on this project. And most importantly, we have the 58 counties. They are the ultimate end users on the new system that we're building. We have representation from the Child Welfare Directors Association, and even within the counties, sub-departments, Child Welfare Services and Probation, who will be using this new system. I don't know does anybody deal with projects with counties? Can you get a show of hands? Yeah. Kind of get an idea that there's really, really tiny counties with staffed by 3 people for the whole entire county, and then you have what I call the state of LA. So with that, you guys get an idea of like, with 25,000 users. Oh, and also can't forget, Native American tribes. They're going to be the first time having an actual child welfare case management system. So this is a new system for them all together. With that, with all those entities, we're basically counting about 120 entities and organizations represented that we want to get feedback from. This slide here basically talks about what Les had introduced. The ultimate goal of child welfare services, when we're talking about this system, we really are talking about life and death. We're talking about children who are at risk of abuse and neglect. And the striking thing about that 475,000 number for me is the fact that they're at risk from abuse and neglect from their parents and family members. These are cases that are referred from, oftentimes that if aren't reported, nobody would ever know. On average, like Les was saying, 100,000 kids are in foster care or in close supervision because they're at risk of abuse and neglect. As part of the legacy system that they're using, about 500,000 to 750,000 individuals, including children that are at risk of abuse and neglect, their family members, service providers such as psychological services, educational services, and medical services. All those individuals are documented, assessed, and monitored through the existing system. So in working in this project, I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of different social workers, and I've always admired the work that they do. But now that I have the opportunity to come in close contact with them, I really do understand how important their role in our society is. I don't know if you can read that meme really well, but this is provided to me by one of our county consultants in the project. It says, if you ever want to know what a social worker mind feels like, imagine a browser with 2,800 tabs open all the time. They're constantly worrying about the kids. They're constantly worrying about where placements happen, let alone having to deal with an antiquated system that was built in the early 90s, having to service that system. Like one of the quotes here, they constantly have to copy and paste within the same system because functionality is siloed. I just want to share a very brief story that one of the social workers shared with me in terms of actual social work. There was a child who had missed a lot of days of school, constant truancy. She had an issue with lice. So she would go to school, and then the teachers would find lice on her and send her back home. And this went back and forth, back and forth. The school even provided her with medicine to try to treat it. And it got to a certain point where social services, child welfare services was referred, and the social worker took the case. Now, in their world, this is pretty routine when kids missing school that they'll get a referral on it. So she didn't think much of it. Come to find out, when she actually investigated and actually visited the home of this child, she basically uncovered a child sex ring. I'm not going to go into the gory details, but it goes to show like it's the small details and the small things that they have to do that makes a difference in the lives of kids. And to that point, if we don't have an IT system, a case management system that works for them, they're not going to be able to do the job. They're going to be servicing the system instead of the system servicing them. So kind of taking it back to our monolithic RFP approach, we basically had an RFP that was 1,200 pages, spanning 10 different sections and numerous appendices. Can you get that, Greg?
Yeah, that wasn't me.
Okay.
That was Les.
Yeah. So we have 8 teams working on this, and basically 60 authors on this one document. And like I said, we want to be able to distribute this RFP to our stakeholder community, and we want them to get feedback. We want to get feedback from them. So how many of you spend your weekends reading RFPs, especially one that's 1,200 pages, or would like to? besides you guys. So no, I mean, and we'll get to why we developed this solution to address that very problem. As a project, we identified a timeline for how we're going to do this review. We basically gave them 2 months to read the RFP, provide feedback, and give comments back to us. And then we took 2 or 3 weeks to process those comments and distribute it back to those 8 teams so that they can incorporate it into a new draft. And what the project really did, in a conscious effort to engage stakeholders, is we hosted a stakeholder collaboration sessions, or multiple sessions. In fact, it was 6 full days over 2 weeks where we actually sat and hosted a webinar with our stakeholders to say, hey, we read your comments, we heard what you're saying, and these are the things that we did, and this is how we addressed them in our newest draft. So kind of taking a step back, so we have this problem of having this huge document that is pretty unwieldy and quite frankly pretty boring to read, but we want feedback on it. And so we, of course, as IT folks, look to an IT solution to help us with that. And as projects go, we're short in schedule, short in resources, and we need to deliver a product basically in 2 months from conception, design, development, testing, and rollout in 2 months to over 600 RFP reviewers statewide. In addition, we have the project has identified very specific requirements that we needed to have in this product. It needed to be robust and secure. It needed to be available 24/7 because the work of child welfare services is a 24/7, 365 operation. We want it to be available for our stakeholders to, if they wanted to, 3 a.m. on a Saturday when they're working on a case to be able to read our RFP and give comments. Of course, because this is a confidential procurement, we need to have secure access. And administratively speaking, we want to be able to identify who the stakeholders are and who's given the comments and be able to track and organize and sort these comments. We needed an elegant solution that basically goes over the gamut of our users. We have social workers who, let's say, they were basically doing social work before the time of the internet. And we have young kids who are straight out of college. We need a solution, kids who are very comfortable with technology. We needed a solution that covers the whole entire gamut. And the trickiest part of all of this, of course, is we want them to read and review our RFP, but not from cover to cover. We want them to be able to provide meaningful comments to our RFP without having to slog through 1,200 pages. And of course, what I was talking about earlier, support. We basically used any and all means of support to support our users. We had webinar trainings, we had online guides, we even set up a temporary help desk so that they can call in. We had an open line, basically 3 days a week that we staff for 2 hours that they can call in with questions. A little bit about the actual methodology that we took. So again, 1,200 pages, that's probably how many pages, that's probably not even all 1,200 pages there. It's called a focus review. Instead of reading the RFP line by line, we wanted the stakeholders to have freedom to go to the specific sections of the RFP that they're interested in. Some county stakeholders might want to lean towards more the technology side. Others might want to look at the nuts and bolts of the functionality that they're going to be getting. We want them to have the freedom to comment and read on those specific areas. And so what we did was we basically took our RFP and broke it down into 3 main categories. There's a business category, a technical category, and a procurement category. And further broken down those into actual topics that they can read up on. And so what we basically broke this, the solution that we came up with was, we're going to guide them to the areas of the RFP that they should be reading in terms of those topics. And we're only going to ask them 2 questions. we're going to ask them, did we do a good enough job in this topic where you feel like we met the business needs? Yes, no. And if not, like, what can we do to change that? And the second question is, did we do a sufficient job where, like, a vendor looking at this RFP will provide us a solution that will work? Incidentally, talking about the culture and the language of social workers, we had the idea of maybe using SurveyMonkey to do this. And apparently survey has a lot of negative connotations when we were talking about social work. They feel like we're not really engaging them, that we're asking for pre-formed questions and we're not really collaborating with them. So the word survey was nowhere to be found in any of this product. And with that, we actually, fortunately for us, we had private vendor partners from Kiefer who was able to provide us with a technical solution. And Greg, do you want to come up and talk a little bit about our partnership?
I'll keep it brief because we're going to get to the demo. So you can do
Okay.
that too. So I left something off of Les's biography toward the end. He has an ongoing desire to harness advanced technologies to improve government and service delivery for the betterment of all Californians. So this was kind of we hadn't even met, and we hadn't even signed the contract yet, and we got a phone call from his office saying, can you come over this afternoon and start working on this project? And we said, what project? And I said, oh, our first change request on the first day. So we actually did a change request on the first day, and they said, well, can we have this in 2 weeks? I thought you said 2 months.
Yeah.
So we actually went out there the next day and met with their team. In 1 day, we came back in 3 days with a proof of concept and presented to their team. And then we went into refinement for about a month to do that. And in part of that, we were actually setting up the 600 users that needed to provide commentary on it while they were testing it because of the very short time frame. And some of the things that we actually did was we actually used SharePoint Online for that. So they already had their Office 365 tenant set up, which all of you are going to get, which also comes with SharePoint Online, which is easy to set up. And we said, great, you already have it installed, it's already set up. Let's use SharePoint Online for that, and let's allow those people to connect to your environment. And so we provisioned out 600 users in a very, following a very detailed process because this is a very confidential RFP, right? You don't want to accidentally give one to a vendor and say, whoops, sorry, you have access to the whole system. So what we did, they had to sign NDAs. So we had to go through a process and law, getting his his law degree, said, we got to have a process in place to make this work. So while they were doing that, we were actually building the system. So we were able to launch it within about a month and a half and have people online with kind of a Facebook-like review process. And you know how you have a really complex problem you're presented with and you say, make it really, really, really simple? And then you say, what's that look like? And so working with these guys, they had a lot of ideas on how to make that simple, and they knew their audience well. So they knew the customers they were working with, and you said, this is the type of people we're working with, this is their experience, and this is how we have to have a system work and function so that we can get the information back and actually demonstrate that they've listened to the stakeholders and collected that feedback. But definitely a challenge. I don't know how would you guys do it without a collaboration tool? You wouldn't. You would maybe email it to people, do committees. They had a very short timeline, so we sat in the room with them and walked through this process and saying, how do we streamline this? Because you have a deadline, and we're right here, and the deadlines are like right here, really close. And so this was, again, the tool, and we'll get to that so you can demo it. Some real quick technical components. Again, Office 365, SharePoint Online. We provisioned it not only to their internal staff, because they had access to stuff that the external stakeholders didn't have access to. So they could actually look at the composite view of everything and look at some of the different reports we built for them. We did some real simple custom stuff because, again, short time period, make it usable as easy as possible. And again, put together a bidders library, so we had all the artifacts online, made it easy for them to find them. And then we actually did some videos and some training material that augmented their efforts to get these people up to speed as quickly as possible. The design challenges, again, complex problem. you still have to deliver it. You try to figure out how to simplify it and get something out to the users as quickly as possible. And you'll get to see a demo here, so I'll keep my time short on this part.
Okay.
But they're a great team to work with and had a great vision for getting something done. And then the end product, like you guys mentioned, going agile with the procurement. So they took all this information they collected, all the modifications to it, and then broke that 1,200-page document into pieces so they could actually go agile with the procurement and get the services to their customers faster and sooner, and have stuff in their hands immediately versus waiting for up to 5 years for. Okay, thanks, John. And we're going to head back to Wire for the demo.
Okay. It's fair. So basically, this is what we're calling our SharePoint collaboration tool. It's based on SharePoint Online, Office 365. And basically this, I mean, it looks very Spartan, but it did the job. Not a lot of bells and whistles, but this is what our stakeholders expected from us. It has a RFP document repository. Basically, if they wanted to print out certain sections of the RFP and read it, they can do so. Or if they want the whole entire thing, all 1,200 pages, it's available for them. But let me just go straight to the heart of this product, which is the guided review. So we've broken up the RFP document into 3 major categories, business, technical, and procurement related. And these are all the topics that they're accustomed to. These are basically, some of them are functionality related, some of them are business related. And so, for instance, a county social worker who's interested in self-service and want to read up and comment on it can go directly to self-service. I'm sorry? Business referred to customer? Correct. And so what it does is it directs them to this form. There's a brief description narrative of what this topic is about and what we mean when we're saying self-service. But more importantly, it has the reference sections. So if you wanted to read specifically on self-service, these are the specific sections of the RFP that you should be looking at. And on that, we also made it easier on them by having links directly to the actual sections of the RFP to the right. So what they can do is they go to this form here, go to the sections, read it, and then come back and answer the two questions. Does it meet your business needs? Yes. And the system is actually smart enough that it knows based on your login who you are and what division you're coming from and what organization you're coming from. And that's it. That's how they would read and comment on our RFP. Now, in addition, they also want to be able to collaborate amongst each other. They want to be able to see their own comments, see comments from other people within their organization, and then comments by other counties and other users. And so what Kiefer was able to build for us is basically the sorting of all these comments. Let me just show you. I think we have anything here. So you can see there's a sorting and categorization and filtering of different comments by different users. The last thing I want to show you that's kind of neat that Kiefer Consultant built for us was stakeholders want the ability to see other people's comments and not have to enter a duplicate comment. And so they want something like a Facebook like. But there is a built-in functionality within SharePoint that does that. but they didn't like the sound of like and unlike. And so what they did was we had what's called agree and unagree. Which grammatically is not correct, but it met the needs. And on top of that, this is actually very useful for us because this is a voting mechanism. This allows us to see which comments are really important that we should really pay attention to. And so that was a really nice feature that doesn't come out of the box that we had help to build. And I think we're really running short on time, so let me just wrap it up really quickly.
So how did you track who gave comments and who did not?
In terms of, once you have a login, based on your profile, that's automatically entered in.
Well, no, as an administrator, you want to make sure you get comments from people, right?
Oh, I see.
And so how do you track if they even?
So what we did was we had a stakeholder registry that we filled out beforehand, and we sent out invitations out to our stakeholders. And depending on whether or not they respond, and if they give us the appropriate information, then we'll give them access. So does that not answer your question?
Or if you had 600 and you only had 200 reply, right? How do you know if they engaged or not? Yeah.
1,000 people that you want to get comments from,
Mm-hmm.
how do you keep track of who has given the comments and who has not?
Well, basically, at the end of this tool, what we actually do is we're able to extract and get an Excel extraction of the data, and we have it all in one spreadsheet, and it shows all the replies that we've gotten. Yeah.
So you can say, if I sent it, they only sent out to 600 users, and they created the pyramid, right? So they had 25,000 stakeholders, and they assigned point of contacts that represented them, and then they participated. But if the 600 that participated, out of the 600, actually, how many provided comments? So you could do those analytics in Excel. So we made it, again, we tried to keep it as simple as possible, dump it to Excel, and say, hey, maybe out of the 600, we got 480.
Yeah.
But at least you can measure to say, I had 600 potential people that could comment.
Yeah.
And I don't know what those stats, I don't know if you ever looked at those.
We basically got about close to 1,000 comments and approximately about 200 stakeholders organization that actually responded. I mean, of course, we can't make them respond, but if they do, then we definitely took that into consideration.
I'm not sure if I'm following your line of questioning, but are you asking where did the comments go? Like how were the comments solicited?
Let's say, okay, I have 10 people that I want to get comments from.
Right.
25,000 people, I can't keep track of who, how many. Did I get all the comments from anybody?
Went up to 600, right?
Yeah, it went up to 600.
So what,
But are they commenting in SharePoint? Where are they commenting?
Yeah.
They weren't required to.
Yeah. So basically, they would go into the tool and do their commenting there.
But we could easily tell out of the 600 that we gave access to, we can easily tell when we inventory to dump it back in Excel and do the analytics. You have the 600 users we gave access to. He said they got about 200 direct comments. Then you can actually measure that. So you can say out of the 600, I got 200 that spent a lot of time in the system providing detailed comments. If that wasn't enough, when you did those analytics, they could have done another survey and said, look, we need 60% participation.
Yeah, exactly.
So you could actually do those analytics to say how many actually participated. If you did SurveyMonkey, for example, it gives you those bar charts and everything. We didn't build that for them because we only have 2 months.
That wasn't one of our requirements.
Well, we could have. We could have given them charts and reporting services and stuff, but
Yeah.
I think we're missing out on the other half of the collaboration, though. This
Yeah.
tool was just to collect comments.
yeah.
The biggest part was the collaboration sessions that we had thereafter. We were able to sort all the different comments because of the fact that we put them in what we call themes. It was very easy to aggregate that information, and our teams then would actually analyze and figure out whether or not what the disposition is going to be on them. And on those where we made revisions to the RFP during the collaboration sessions, we talked about it. And then we had two-way engagement. It wasn't a one-way engagement. And therefore, if in fact, something wasn't right still, we were able to still, get additional feedback to get it right.
Yeah.
And then also you got that, like Les was saying, is you got that direct commentary and you demonstrated to the stakeholders that you did listen, you captured their material, and when they did those webinars, they could really show the fact that, yes, we captured your information, and yes,
Exactly.
we applied it.
And
And made changes. That's huge when you were trying to say, we listened, we took action, and we actually demonstrated that to you.
And this process worked tremendously better than on our first effort with the CWS web RFP. What we did with the earlier RFP, we used Cover. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it has a collaboration component to it. It used to be called Speed Dev, and it's the requirements repository. We utilized Cover with all the counties, and we got inundated with redundant comments, comments that weren't easily sorted. We also had chains of comments from all the different county people replying. It was a mess. Very difficult for us to figure out, you know, what are all the changes that we need to make, much less getting back to your end users. What did we do? And so we knew we didn't want to do that again. And so I think this tool that Greg Kiefer's company developed really helped us a lot, tremendously. And it went very smoothly. We had multiple collaboration sessions, and then we had feedback from the counties, and they were very happy with how we dealt with the situation.
Question in the back?
So when you're categorizing comments, was it using like the computer system to create logic to categorize them, or is it done manually, or just by response to a particular question? How did you do that?
So basically, we started off going back to our FSR, and we identified certain areas that we were going to address in building these new in this new system. So we took those areas that we were going to address and turned them into actual categories. And one last question.
Did you get any feedback, or did you find through the collaborations that the two-question approach up front, did they say that was kind of limiting, or was that more effective for them? Comparing this to something like a public comment, obviously there's not.
It helped in both ends. It helped because it made their job easier because it's very simple. But it helped us keep it focused in terms of, otherwise we would get answers from it would digress and go all over the place. But to kind of address that, they still had a comments field if they want to go off the grid and say something outside of it, which we did get. The freedom is there.
I was just thinking in terms of user behaviors these days, people, if they have like a two-question radio option rather than actually typing stuff, and they might, out of convenience, go the easier route and say, yeah, this works pretty well for me, even though
Yeah.
they have a nuanced comment that they didn't really want to bother typing. I was just wondering if anybody said that, you know, it was a little bit too simple.
No.
Does that work?
Fantastic, yeah. Okay, I think that wraps it up. Thank you very much for your time here.
Thanks.